Hello, McDude here, and today we join Jebediah Kerman, who is back from his uh, abrupt encounter with the Munar surface. We are 258,000 meters above the surface of the planet Kerbin, and on with another lunar launch underway. And I'm getting ready to dispose of my third stage. I'm doing it a rather unorthodox manner, something I read about once in the forum. Someone said they spun their spacecraft around and then ejected the next stage, so I decided to try that. I do have a lot of empty stages, or a lot of space debris orbiting Kerbin, and I'd like to try to... I have not been a good steward of space, and so I want to come up with a way that will make it easier, easier to dispose of some of the space debris. Anyhow, after ejecting the stage, we line up the spacecraft for the translunar injection burn, and I'm now going to go ahead and speed the video up about 4 times just as I get ready for the burn, because it's not that long away. I don't want to use game time acceleration. But instead of skipping forward, there's some rather pretty views of the planet and the spacecraft I thought were rather fun to look at. Plus, I get to monitor the debris on its way down. We're approaching the maneuver node, so we can execute the maneuver. There goes my debris. I won't really know if that debris ever makes it down, because unfortunately I've been using the same names for all my spacecraft. All my Munar spacecraft. They're all going by Ares 5B, so I can't tell one from another. But anyhow, we go ahead, we start the burn. You see the moon directly out there. I took time to look at things from different angles as I conduct the burn. You see I'm using the long tank again, which I'm beginning to have doubts about. I'm beginning to have doubts that it's stable enough to land them on. But nonetheless, in the meantime, we're on our way. I have the we've completed the burn, and we've now begun our injection. I'll go and I'll slow things down a little bit as I look at all the debris. And as you can see, most of it has the same name. Ares 18. I don't know what that was. Ares 13 was just another thing designed to orbit. But anyway, yeah, that's why I can't tell the stuff apart. Look, half of it has the same name. Anyway, we're in line for a pretty good, pretty simple route. A lot better than our last mission. I find that there's 2 keys to a good approach to the Mun. One is to have the Mun located about 45 degrees off from the Space Center at the moment of launch, which probably doesn't sound right, but I'm only now beginning to research launch windows and figure those things out. The second is to, after a launch, to maintain a due east heading, to always be at 9 degrees, because the Mun is pretty much on the plane of the ecliptic with the planet. So you make your best approach when you come in from due east, when you start from due east. That said, fast forwarding a little bit, we now find ourselves at the Mun. Here, I'm circularizing my orbit. I have a nice, I think this is a periapsis of about 33,000 meters and an apoapsis of 35,000 meters. So with that, with the orbit finalized, I'm now free to move on to my next orbital vehicle. This is the arrival of the Ares 18 Munar rocket. Basically, I changed the name. It's the same spacecraft as before. I just changed the name. It does have a different pilot. This is Bill Kerman is joining us for this excursion. We're getting ready to tighten up our orbit. Actually, finalize our orbit. And Bill starts screaming as we fire up the engines to conduct our orbital insertion burn. You can see the orbit begin to come down. The orbits of this aircraft, of this spacecraft, and the Ares 5B are slightly going to overlap, but the altitude is slightly off, so there's no risk of collision. After I kill the power, you can see where it's a bit of an eccentric orbit. But when I get out to the apogee, or apoapsis, I'll, well, no. Actually, it's when I come back to the periapsis, I'll bring down the apoapsis. Tighten up the orbit a little bit. But for now, the second spacecraft has arrived, and we get ready for a new development. What you're looking at is Bob Kerman piloting the Ares 14 Munar test rocket DNU. DNU stands for Do Not Use. First couple of times I flew this, it was incredibly unstable. And it just didn't fly all that well. But I decided during the process of sending 3 ships to the moon, I decided to go ahead and give it a second chance. Because it looks to me like it should work, even though it just doesn't. It's terribly, terribly unstable. I used that tricoupler and meld 3 engines together instead of 4. I also used the VT45 engines. I should probably use the VT30s and add a second set of RCS, which I think would help it, but the 5B design works so much better. As you're about to witness, as I try to maneuver the thing around, it just doesn't want to go. At times it seems to almost overcompensate. At times it just seems to just not be capable of maneuvering. I don't know. But at full power, with the gimbling engines going on, I just can't seem to get it to stabilize. You notice I have 2 RCS tanks up top because this thing just requires so much reaction control to keep it online. I am finally able to get it up to 90 degrees, just as the engines are about to burn out, and I'm already up to 25,000 meters. As the engines burn out, the booster burns out, I jettison that entire massive structure and continue our climb. And my plan is, once I get to the apoapsis, just pitch on over towards the horizon, which is pretty much the way it always works, or parts towards the horizon, kick the engines back in. We're at a point here where, and I've pretty much realized the way these maneuver nodes always work, getting into orbit. At the apoapsis, you pretty much want to pitch over to the horizon or close to it, and then kick your engines back in full power. The other day, a friend of mine asked me why I named this project Ares, why I named all these spacecraft Ares. And the answer is, NASA had once had one of their programs named after one of the zodiac symbols. They named it Gemini. And I decided to name this program after one of the zodiac symbols. And I thought of Ares. Ares, of course, was the name of the Greek god of war. It's also the zodiac symbol for my ex-wife. My ex-wife was an Aries. And I thought to myself, like those two destructive individuals of long ago, I will name this spacecraft Ares. I'll name this project Ares, because I plan to do a lot of destruction. I'm going to crash a lot of spacecraft. I'm going to kill a lot of Kerbals. So it only made sense to name it Ares. Anyway, we go ahead and we blow off our last stage. We use that. We use our very last stage to circularize our orbit. Actually, to complete our orbit. You'll see the periapsis starts to come up. I monitor the apoapsis so it doesn't get too high, because it's wasteful space the periapsis. And then I start calculating my way to the moon. So what you're looking at now is my lunar orbit, what is it? Translunar injection burn. We've completed the burn. You now see the flight in towards the moon. The flight in is rather uneventful. It was sped up by a gamed time warp. Once we get closer in, I turn time warp off or throttle it back a little bit until we get up to the Mun encounter. This particular approach is coming in a little bit low, and I've learned to do a better job of managing time warp. It's something you really have to stay on top of. Especially when traveling, especially true when traveling to another space body, because until you get into an encounter, you really don't know what the final approach is going to look like. Because the final approach changes radically as opposed to when you're still out there, before the encounter. That is, before the Mun encounter. So anyway, what you're looking at, a little bit of glare from the sun there, is we finalized the orbit. I look at it from a variety of angles. I also check out my other two spacecraft while I'm there. I prepare to do my final burn, line it up with the I forget what that's called, the route vector, or whatever it's called, maneuver vector. There you go. A little bit of time warp. You see the other two spacecraft still orbiting about. Once I get in, my apoapsis is about 416,000 meters, or periapsis at this point, I should say. For a 21-second burn, or a T-minus 30 seconds, 25 seconds. We throttle up. It's a very short burn. Bob freaks out during it. But nonetheless, when we're done, we're in orbit around the Mun. And it's my third spacecraft to orbit the Mun. And since the demo only gives you allows you to have 3 flights at one time, I've now maxed out all my flights for a lunar approach. So, at our next episode, we'll finalize these orbits and we'll begin bringing these spacecraft down. And if need be, I'll bring more Kerbals to the moon, and we'll keep marching them aboard those spacecraft at gunpoint if need be, until I set someone down on the lunar surface. I'm McDude. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you next time.